This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Gary Smith.
From Manhattan to Orange County, where we've got a bi-coastal BARD and no shortage of topics, by the way.
No, I mean, it just, aside from the fact that we seem to be able to find classified documents anywhere we look for them, we've also got several other stories that we could get into as well.
By the way, could this get any more? I mean, it really is somewhat comical when you think about it.
I mean, Mark, somewhat. I would argue the only funnier thing that could happen is if they discover classified documents in Hunter's possession.
Right. Well, actually, or the only person who apparently hasn't had them yet is Kamala. So I think that's next, right? Because now Pence has discovered classified documents. Biden is on his third or fourth go round of classified documents. Trump is apparently got the classified documents, strewn all over Mar-a-Lago. And what are we going to do now? Are we going to appoint yet another special master or special counsel? Or, this kind of points out what, at least from my position, the absurdity of all of this. And I know that people argue, well, there's, Reality Winner went to jail, and look at Edward Snowden, and WikiLeaks founder is out there trying to get extradited back. Well, they aren't the president, or arguably the vice president, who was arguably a heartbeat away. And this is, by the way, yes, they're not above the law, but they are the people that the classification system was designed for, because it's not to keep it away from the people running the government. It's to funnel the information up to the people who are running the government. So it's playing out in a way that I could never have designed to point out the absurdity of all of this and the breathlessness that has overtaken this.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, like I said, next up is Kamala. She's got to have some classified documents somewhere, right?
One would think, and it's also been somewhat funny today watching all of the other Republicans on the Hill and over in Senate who are all up in arms because Pence initiated this himself, and they confused as to why he would have done it. I mean, I think it's a prudent move. I mean, maybe not the best for all the other Republicans in the news cycle, but if once the second guy gets popped, you might want to look around and think I might be next, and I maybe want to be the one who found him myself.
Or you could be George Santos and just lie and say you've got them. Maybe that's the next thing. Santos will say, I've got classified documents. I was the one who classified the documents in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
So getting to a couple of the cases that are getting quite a bit of heat. One interesting thing that popped up today is apparently the public defender for Brian, the accused defendant in Idaho, the Idaho 4, it was just revealed that she had represented the parent of, I believe it was the mother of one of the victims. And so apparently had to recuse herself, look to see either the judge or the prosecutor ask for a hearing on that, or set a hearing as to whether or not there is a conflict of interest, whether it can be waived, whether they have to, the two options would be, does she get off the case defending him, or does she stay on the case and have to bring in somebody else to do the cross-examination of this person who she previously represented? I don't know if you'd followed that, but I thought that was an interesting kind of a little ethical twist.
I'm realizing now, Mark, that it feels like it's been a month since you and I have had a chance to speak. We had some scheduling snafus at the end of last week, and then I got sick over the weekend. I have been following it. I had not seen that detail because today there's another case that I've been hyper-focused on, but I did see over the course of the time since we last spoke that there is now apparently a dog hair DNA evidence that is being considered, where in his apartment they believe they've found a piece of dog hair from the surviving dog from the murder. So I wondered when I saw that story if maybe that informed a little bit more of the fact that they sealed off his apartment, and we were talking about how that was a little bit unusual last time we spoke. But once that came out, it sort of made a little bit more sense to me.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting because now what they presumably will do is test the hair, the dog hair, for mitochondrial DNA and see if they can link it to the dog at the crime scene. And the mitochondrial DNA goes through the maternal strand. I assume, I don't know, but I would assume they can do that with dogs just like they do it with humans. And having cross-examined experts on mitochondrial DNA, I would assume that they can do that. And it'll be interesting to see what they come up with.
Absolutely. What do you want to
let me guess the case you're hyper-focused on.
Go for it.
Murdaugh.
Absolutely. I've been following it like a mad person for the last 2 days. I've got my favorite reporters on the story. I'm reading anything they tweet. I'm trying to read as many articles as I can to see where there are discrepancies and then try to focus on where I can find the harder truth in those discrepancies. There's just a lot of information to consume about that case.
So Dick Harpootlian, who's I believe the lead lawyer for Murdaugh, has filed a motion yesterday. I admit to not having looked on the docket today to see if the judge ruled, but he did a motion to exclude the blood splatter evidence.
It has not been ruled on.
Huh?
It has not been ruled on yet. Yes, I did see the motion. I will not pretend I read all 63 pages, but I read some of it and I read a lot of analysis on it. So yes, I'm familiar with what you're talking about here. And for those who may not be, sorry, go ahead.
Why don't you describe it? Or if you want me, I'll distill it down because it's pretty incredible.
Well, the Reader's Digest version is that there was an expert who submitted an opinion that there was no blood splatter found on Alex Murdaugh's clothes. He was subsequently given a higher quality photograph, the raw, unedited, giant photo. And upon reviewing that, he changed his opinion and said, well, while it didn't look in the first picture like there was splatter, when you zoom in on this section at the top of the shirt up here, it was kind of an undershirt type of a situation that he was wearing. There was blood all over it because presumably when he went to go check for signs of life, when he found his family members in the state that they were, that's when he got blood all over himself. But apparently in a section towards the neck at the top of the shirt, when you zoom in on the more high quality photo, this expert has now said, I believe there are up to 100 instances of blood splatter.
And now apparently also, if I understand correctly, they have sprayed on when they tested the material, they sprayed on it. They've now ruined the sample so that it cannot be retested.
Correct.
And as you mentioned, the expert changed his opinion. And by the way, there's at least if you believe the defense motion, he either did this experiment in his garage or his kitchen, and not exactly under scientific conditions. And there's a motion to exclude. Basically, the jury cannot hear this evidence. It's interesting, and I wouldn't be surprised if the prosecution decides to just withdraw that as evidence. And why do I say that? Because the changing of the opinion and the fact that now the defense cannot retest it so that they lose that ability. And normally there's a couple of Supreme Court cases, Trombetta, which was out of California, and Hitch out of California, where in the context of DUIs, where there was not a preservation of the sample and you couldn't retest it, there was an argument that that was a destruction of the evidence or a spoliation of the evidence, and therefore it was a violation of the defendant's due process rights. That if this gets excluded, it's very interesting as to where that leaves the prosecution. Because remember, this was presumably very important evidence that they used in order to get an indictment.
Absolutely. And I thought it was interesting how detailed the filing was. I mean, I've heard analysis that they may have been able to make the exact same case with, a third the amount of pages, but they went in and kept this, put big splash and made sure that it was reported on by everyone because, I'm Dick's a great lawyer by all accounts. And I think that everyone knows in this case, given the kind of small town nature of it, you're not going to end up with 12 jurors who know nothing about the case. You're going to end up with 12 jurors who say they can render a fair verdict, even though they have heard things about the case already. Would that be your assessment? Yeah,
the standard is people sometimes get that a little confused. It's not whether you've heard about it, even whether you've formed an opinion. The question that every judge will take the juror through is, can you set that aside and listen to the evidence and be fair? And that's the nub of the jury selection, or what I call jury deselection, is can you set it aside? Can you be fair? Can you follow my instructions if you're when the judge is doing the voir dire? If the juror asks in the affirmative, then a judge will not grant a challenge for cause. And there's a difference between a peremptory challenge, which you get a number of, where you don't have to give an excuse as long as it's not exercised in a discriminatory way, and a for-cause challenge. So the defense would then, if somebody said, I had an opinion, or I've discussed this case and I thought he was guilty, which, by the way, from a defense standpoint, you don't necessarily want to get rid of somebody who says, I thought he was guilty. I have kept people on who have said, and who have actually ended up voting not guilty in cases of mine, where they've said, I can set it aside. I understand, I'll follow the law, and if I believe they're telling the truth and they don't have an agenda, they're not a so-called stealth juror. Sometimes that's somebody who actually is telling you the truth because they're being honest about they have an opinion. I always worry about people who are too anxious. I've never heard about this case. Yeah, I'd love to serve. I've always wanted to serve. I mean, that's usually a telltale sign if somebody's a stealth.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think? Do you think that is... I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. Have you ever made a filing so close to jury selection, knowing that there would be media attention and that the jury pool or the potential jury pool may become aware of it because it's going to be reported on? Is that a tactic? If
they were trying to do it so that the jurors would hear, I'm not so sure that makes a whole lot of sense, because why would you want them focused on blood spatter evidence if it doesn't come in? Because then you've kind of tainted the pool. That the jurors often say, what are we not hearing? What are you not letting us hear? I don't know that I would want that. Usually what happens is that the prosecution does a last minute discovery dump on the defense, and then the defense has to file something, object in real time, or they've waived it. So that could be what's happening here.
Interesting. Well, we got through day 2 of jury selection, and I believe that they still. I believe I've got some stats here that a reporter tweeted about the first day. If you want to go through them, or we can wait until Thursday.
I'd like to hear.
Okay. Well, let me find it here. It's this one right here. Okay, so this is from Liz Farrell, who is one of the reporters down there with Mandy Matney. She's one of the co-hosts of the Murdaugh Murders podcast, and she said that overall, and this was today, so this is speaking about yesterday, day 1. She said overall, about 112 jurors, more than half, were eliminated yesterday, either because they were exempted, excused, or transferred to another term of court. 106 jurors were qualified yesterday. That includes the number who had to go into chambers for a conference, and no one's sure if any of those were eliminated. Of the panel that went through to voir dire yesterday, 51% were women, 49% men, 69% were white, and 31% were black or Latino. Of the jurors that got to go home, 33% were black, 67% were white, 51% of all jurors who went home were women, and of all the jurors who will continue on to the striking phase of jury selection, 71% are white and 29% are black or Hispanic.
Not a bad distribution statistically. In fact, it's surprising in a lot of ways that it's so evenly split statistically that reflects the demographic as well. I would think that this has got to be a very difficult jury selection, given a couple of factors. I mean, first, Dick Harpootlian has been there forever. Dick is the defense lawyer and obviously knows quite a bit of the people and surroundings, and the Murdaugh himself has got 3 generations of practicing in that area, in that court house, both prosecuting as a city prosecutor, municipal prosecutor, and so the family is well known. So it's got to be quite a. I can only imagine the discussions that the defendant is having with his lawyer and what the prosecutor is doing as well, because in these smaller communities, there's a lot of 6 degrees of separation, if you will, during the jury selection. Plus, each side has probably got people doing a deep dive so that they know who it is, what it is, where they live, and have the kinds of questions answered that they want. By the way, they're using, I believe, a 4-page questionnaire that's fairly standard, that has some interesting questions. There's a series of questions in the 30s that always pique my interest, and the ones I kind of look to first. Where do you get your news from? What outlets? And do you have a bumper sticker on your car? I always laugh about that one because that's not as telling as it was when I first started practicing,
right,
when people used to put bumper stickers a lot more prevalently on their car. But that's one of the questions that's asked. And you also want to know, one of the things that's important is what's their prior jury experience. Were they a 4-person on a prior jury? Was it civil? Was it criminal? Did they reach a verdict? Was it a hung jury? I mean, those are the kinds of things that you want to know and that they would find out basically on the questionnaire, and then they would pursue that even more. Then if they know any of the participants, presumably, or they have an opinion, a strong opinion, that's probably why they take them into chambers, so they don't poison the well or pollute the other veneer panel, the members of the veneer.
Absolutely. Well, we'll keep watching, and we will be back later this week with more on this and many other stories, I'm quite sure, hopefully with Adam Carolla along for the ride, and hopefully we'll see you next Sunday. I hopefully will not be sick again.
You're back in the pink. You sound much better, Gary.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Get well, stay well.
Absolutely. All right, Mark, thank you very much for your time today. You have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Beyond a Reasonable Doubt. Stay tuned for more bonus episodes coming soon.